Hi, Laurel here. So glad you're here. Hope you're having a great day whenever it is you're watching this. Today, I wanted to share a tool with you that I created to calculate the value of working with a professional resume writer or and career coach, such as myself. Why is it a good idea that you should do this? Um, the services range in price from 3 to 4 figures, depending on your level of your career path and what kind of resume you're looking for. So, what is the return on the investment for you? It turns out that financially you can calculate this pretty easily based on two pieces of data. The first coming from a company called Rise Smart, which was an outplacement firm back in the teens that found that helping their clients, they were basically helping corporations who were laying off large numbers of people who wanted to help the staff that they were letting go find new work. Their clients were able to be 60% faster than average in landing a new job, cutting the average at that time 6 to 7 months down to 3 to 4 months. So, what does this mean, faster than average? The average comes from this report generated by the Bureau of Labor Statistics, unemployed people duration of unemployment. And this post was actually inspired by this recent news item about the firing of the commissioner of the Bureau of Labor Statistics. And I just wanted to let you know how I use that data in my business and why in helping my clients. And I do recommend for anyone taking a look at this article from the Economic Policy Institute to get some facts about that person and that firing and so forth. So this report, basically from the Bureau of Labor Statistics, tells how long it takes people to find a new job. This is data that has been tracked for over 60 years now on a monthly basis. So, looking at this information is kind of the equivalent of a snapshot in time of the situation that, you have looking at. It's kind of the equivalent of if you're in your car and you look at your gas gauge and you go, oh, I've got, I'm getting down on gas, I'm going to need to fill up pretty soon. Okay, it's just information. That's all for leaders to use. So I look at the seasonally adjusted numbers, which basically takes out the temporary jobs like during the holidays or in the summer. And so you don't want to have that skew the numbers. And so it also tracks, this report tracks the previous 4 months, so you can kind of see trends. And the unemployed, and then you can see how many people that are unemployed, how long they have been, from those who are recently unemployed of less than 5 weeks up to those that are considered long-term unemployed, 27 weeks or more. Now, like I said, this data has been tracked for decades, and here's a chart that was put together showing that average duration of unemployment since 1948. And you'll see the vertical axis is the number of weeks, and if your screen is small, if you're looking at this on a smaller device, the horizontal lines are weeks, so it's on multiples of 5. So 5 weeks is the bottom line, up to 45 weeks at the top. And then the gray vertical lines that you'll see there, those represent economic recessions. And one of the things you'll note, and by the way, a recession is that when there's a significant decline in the gross domestic product. And what happens when that happens is drops in spending. Consumers, stop spending money, and businesses consequently then, fire people or lay people off, and production slows down. Okay. And when this happens over a period, there was a negative GDP for 2 consecutive quarters, that is considered a recession. And so you can see since 1948, there have been a number of recessionary periods, right? What's interesting is right after a recession, it takes longer for people to find a job. So that's a common trend. So it spikes upward. In other words, it becomes harder for people to find work, and it takes longer. And what's helpful about knowing these numbers is you then can plan. So given us any particular situation in the economy, knowing how much money you should have saved up in the event you lose your job, your job for any reason, whether it's a recession or some medical issue or whatever, and you then need to get back into the workforce. How long is it going to take on average to do that? So it's all, so for planning purposes, Knowing that number is helps you create a goal, a target for saving. So you want to have, in a some kind of a fund, you need to be able to tap into enough cash to be able to cover you for those months that you might be off. And back for quite a few years, it was on average between 2 and 4 months was what it took to find a new job, going from 1948 all the way really until that big depression. They call it the Great Recession, I should say, of 2008. I don't know why they call it great. It wasn't all that great, I'll tell you. I lived through that time. It was not a great time. And there you can see after that period of 2008, 2010, it spiked up as high as 9 months, over 9 months. These are averages. Okay, so there were people that it took longer than that. And then you'll notice in 2020, that big spike downward, that is because so many people suddenly were laid off because of the pandemic. And that caused a spike in the number of people who were unemployed for that short term, okay, of short-term period of time. And then, of course, after the pandemic, things started opening up again. And there again, it was not exactly a recession, but you'll see it spiked up to about 7 months. It was taking people. And then it came back down again, thanks to a lot of input into the economy, making sure people didn't lose their homes. People, if you remember, during the pandemic, there was laws passed that renters could not be evicted. There also was an extension of the unemployment compensation that was, gave that longer, and they raised the amount of compensation just so that the economy could keep going and people were not hurt. Student loan payback was paused, so that helped people to be able to survive so many people being unemployed. And anyway, and they also gave money back to states and local governments through the rescue plan, and then later through the infrastructure plan, all of which actually goes back to kind of how it was in the 1970s. There used to be this thing called revenue sharing, where the federal government would give money back to the states and local governments, which was actually interestingly signed into law by Richard Nixon. Anyway, so I just thought that this chart was very interesting to show, and how this can be used in a variety of ways. So what I did was I created this ROI calculator. Now my clients are similar in number to Rise Smarts. I would say it's 50% faster than the average. People, many of my clients the vast majority of my clients only need to send out 5 applications or fewer, 10 at the very most, in order to get interviews. I always tell my clients, if you send out more than 5 applications and you don't get a single call back, let's talk, because there's something that you're missing, and I have troubleshooting guides that I have for people. But honestly, over the years, I've been doing resumes for many years, and five applications is usually all it takes in order to get obviously interviewed and land a new job. But for this purpose of this calculator, I decided to be a little bit more conservative, just to be on the safe side. I don't want to overinflate the value of what I do. But here is an example at 30% faster. Okay, instead of 50 to 60% faster. Supposing someone is working and they've got an income of like $55,000 a year, which comes out to $1,100 gross wages, which happens to be about the average for the state of Wisconsin, the median income, I should say. And so by right now, at this time, the Bureau of Labor Statistics, it's averaging 24 weeks, which is about 5.5 months. That is 7.2 weeks. So 30% faster is 7.2 weeks. So that's basically what working with a professional such as myself will save you 7 weeks of unemployment, okay, of being unemployed, or 7 weeks of employment at a lower wage, 7.2 weeks of being unhappy in a position because, for whatever reasons you're making a change. But that's the financial benefit that you might have at that level. And of course, depending on your income. Now, just so you know, I'm passionate about helping people find work, and I try to never turn people away. So for my fees, which can range, like I said, 3 to 4 figures, depending on your situation and what kind of resume and if it's a graphic resume versus a kind of a standard resume. Anyway, it can vary a little bit, and I always like to talk to people first and find out your situation, and then I give people a quote. I've also created a sliding scale, and for people who are in financial straits where they can't afford my regular rates, and I will drop my prices down based on 1.5% of your average your gross annual income is my fee, okay, to work with me. So anyway, so that's something that I do for people that can't afford my regular rates. So anyway, that would be how I would calculate the return on investment minus my fees. That's what's over in here. So you can really see how much value there is in working with someone like myself. Interestingly, just a real quick aside, this is the most recent report that was generated just at the time that that person was let go from the Bureau of Labor Statistics, and we don't know what's gonna, how accurate this report is going to be going forward. I did discover something kind of interesting in May. At the end of May, I was working on creating some training for my clients about this, and I went to look for this report, and AI at that time, Google was presenting an AI response when you would type in a query, and it summarized this. And my first glance was like, oh, that's interesting. Things are coming down 21.4 to 21.3, but then I thought, wait a minute, there's something wrong with this. They're comparing not seasonally adjusted to seasonally adjusted, and then they're comparing April of 2024 to February of 2025, and I did this in May of 2025. And so anyway, I just wanted to just bring your attention to that going forward, so that if you start to see funky things with the reports, this is why, we want to be, you shouldn't be afraid to look at your gas gauge any more than you should be afraid to look at these numbers. It's just simply a snapshot in time that can help you make a decision about what to do, whether you are a leader trying to help the situation and help people, or whether just for yourself and your family, how much to save up and things like that. So anyway, that's all I wanted to share you about. For now, I do have the most recent report, statistics, what it's going to look like going forward, who knows. But anyway, if you'd like to chat with me about how I can help you to save that kind of money and save that kind of headache, weeks of unemployment, please give me a call or reach out to me through my calendar link. I offer a free strategy session where I can learn about your situation and then give you a quote. Thank you so much. Have a great day.